Well, hey, Lincoln Road Chapel, good to be with you on this Holy Saturday, whether you're tuning in the morning or in the afternoon. I hope you had a chance to join us for Good Friday online or in person as we gather together to reflect on and remember the crucifixion of Jesus. When I reflect on the events of that very first Easter, it seems to me, and we kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday, that I think that very first Good Friday would have been so confusing, so disorienting for the friends and the family and the followers of Jesus. Everything that they had built their lives on, everything that they had given themselves to has now been taken away. We know this in our own lives if you've ever faced tragedy, that when tragedy strikes, we often go into crisis mode. You know, we live on adrenaline. There's so much to do. We just get the things done that need to be done. No real time for us to process what's happening and to actually pay attention to what we're feeling or what we're experiencing. For the disciples of Jesus, I expect this might have been the case for them too, from being scattered in the garden on that Thursday night to maybe gathering at the foot of the cross and seeing Jesus hanging there would have been so overwhelming and so unbearable. Not to mention the fact that they would have been looking over their shoulders wondering, are we next? Are we going to be arrested? No real time or wherewithal to process what was happening before them. Kind of like we talked about yesterday as well, would have seemed a bit like a blur. We don't often think too much of Holy Saturday in our particular stream of the faith, particularly as it relates to that very first Easter, and yet it is as much a part of the Easter season as anything else. In the Jewish tradition, Saturday was Sabbath, which is to say that the disciples and for Jesus' family, it was a whole day in which they didn't have to keep busy to distract themselves. In fact, they couldn't keep busy to distract themselves. It was a day of rest, which is to say that it was a day of inactivity, and it allowed them to fully experience their feelings of grief and to take in the full realization that Jesus was gone. Over this Easter weekend, we're looking at 3 Psalms, Psalm 22, Psalm 23, and Psalm 24. This is kind of a short series. We're calling it Redemption Songs. And yesterday we watched and we listened as Jesus invited his grief-stricken followers to turn back to the scriptures, to find their expression of words in the Psalms, but also to understand and process what they were witnessing in his execution. That the Christ had come to suffer for his people, and that somehow through this, God was bringing about redemption, not just for them, but for the whole world. In our Christian tradition, one of the Psalms that we often turn to when we lose a loved one is Psalm 23. It seems fitting for us to turn to it today on this day that those closest to Jesus would have been sitting together, kind of narrowing in on their grief, processing what they'd experienced. This is what Psalm 23 says. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies, and you anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. If on Good Friday we see Jesus as the suffering servant, then on Holy Saturday, we see Jesus as the Good Shepherd, very specifically the Good Shepherd as shown and illustrated in Psalm 23. Shepherds were tasked with the role of caring for their sheep. They were to herd them and guide them home. They were to keep them safe from predators or from thieves or from anything else that might seek to harm them. And in the stillness and the quiet of that first Holy Saturday, for the followers of Jesus resting in their grief, and for Jesus himself resting in the tomb, as it were. This is precisely what's going on. Psalm 23 is bookended by these two pictures of comfort and joy. On the front end, we're told that the shepherd provides all that their sheep needs. I shall not be in want. We're told that he brings them to a place of shalom, of peace, where things are exactly as they ought to be. Here in the text, it's described as green pastures, quiet waters. It's a picture of tranquility. It's a picture of rest. At the end of the Psalms, we're invited to celebrate in victory. We're told there's a banquet set up in the presence of the enemies. This is a picture of victory over those who would mean harm to us. Furthermore, the cup is overflowing, a picture of prosperity and abundance. Found in a state where the psalmist says that he is surrounded by love and goodness in the presence of God, dwelling in his house forever. This is what we all want. This is the desire of the human heart, to be safe and to be secure. In a place of shalom, to have nothing to fear, either without or within. To be surrounded by love and goodness and to have all that we need, peace and joy, as our constant state of being. But this is not our lived experience. We live in a world that's corrupted by evil and pain. We live in places where not all of us have enough, where there's fear and where there's darkness. So many things seem to stand between us and true peace, true shalom. In our inner lives, maybe we're plagued with anxiety or doubt. In our relationships, maybe we're confronted by conflict or betrayal. In the wider world around us, we navigate economic and global instability. And it's tiring. It wears us down. And behind it all stands the greatest enemy of all, death itself. The pathway before us is treacherous. It's dark. How can we ever navigate this on our own? Well, Jesus comes then as the Good Shepherd. Jesus comes as the one tasked with caring and providing for what we need. And he comes to lead us through the difficulty in order to bring us home, to bring us into the green pastures and the quiet waters, to have rest. He comes to bring us back to God. The map on my phone will often tell me when there's an accident or a construction on the route between where I'm leaving and where my destination is. And when that happens, it often will reroute me, right, around the mess, around the difficulty. Life isn't so convenient. There's no back road to take us around difficulty. There's nothing that helps us sidestep the darkness that's before us. And so there's actually need for us to have a good shepherd, one who will come to us and gather us up in order to lead us home. Not to lead us around the brokenness, not to lead us around the corruption, but to take us directly through it and to bring us to the victory that stands on the other side. This is what we see at the very center of Psalm 23. In between the picture of shalom and the picture of victory, this is what we are told. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The shadow of the valley of death must be walked, and yet it does not need to be feared. Why? Because the text tells us the Good Shepherd is with us. And by that, it doesn't just mean that he's present walking alongside of us. In fact, he goes ahead and he clears the path for us. The psalmist says, you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The rod was a cudgel. It was a weapon of sorts to be used to drive back predators that might attack. The staff was used to pull sheep back onto the path so that they didn't wander off into danger or get lost. This is what Christ has come to do. This is what Easter is about, that Jesus comes to deal with the evil that seeks to destroy us. And he comes to keep us on the path, that in our propensity to wander off, we might remain close to him. In the Easter event, we not only see the suffering servant who takes upon himself the sin and the corruption of the whole world, but we also see the Good Shepherd, the one who goes before us down into the valley of the shadow of death, into death itself, to clear the pathway. Not that we might circumvent it, but that we might have safe passage through as we find our way home with God forever, a place of shalom and of joy and of life. Holy Saturday was a day of rest. Sabbath for the grieving followers of Jesus, Jesus resting in the tomb, the one who goes ahead to show us that the pathway before us, it need not be feared. The full realization of that being made known the very next day in his resurrection. I hope you are able to join us tomorrow as we gather to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. You can come and be with us in person at 145 Lincoln Road, or you can join us on live. It'll be starting at 10 a.m. But today, in the stillness, in the quiet, whatever stillness and quiet you might be able to find yourself in today, may you be reminded that whatever that pathway before you looks like, it can be walked with confidence because Christ has come and he has gone before us in order to provide everything that we need in order to pass through it to full redemption, that we might have victory over the darkness and be granted peace, joy, goodness, and the love of God forevermore. And so happy Easter, and we'll hopefully see you tomorrow.